It's the 6th and final week of our epic Minecraft tower defense coding tutorial. And don't say I didn't warn you, here there be dragons. So as we wrap up this tutorial series, we're going to be facing off against the Ender Dragon, the ultimate Minecraft enemy, and his dreaded minions, the endermen. Along the way, you're going to be learning a ton about coding, including how to harness the mathematical power of Bezier lines, which we're going to use to smooth out our dragon's flight path. If you've just discovered this tutorial series, you probably want to rewind back to part 1. You can find the link right up there in the corner. But if you do want to start coding from this point, you should load up our catch-up file, which has all the coding we completed in parts 1 to 5, so you can hit the ground running. The link is down below in the description. Make sure to like and subscribe for more amazing Scratch tutorials. Hey, and welcome back to the Chromeworks studio. I'm Andrew Tomek, your technology teacher, and I'm very excited to be bringing you part 6 of what has turned out to be a 6-part series where we've been putting together a really cool Minecraft-themed game that features a lot of the concepts from the original Minecraft. We've got digging and bows and arrows, and we've got a bunch of different mobs. We've got creepers and zombies and endermen. And this week we're rolling out the Ender Dragon, the ultimate Minecraft enemy. And you guys are going to be seeing how we use some interesting math to code this thing to make it look quite realistic. So let's have a look at our game project and see what we have to do. So this is our progress up until this point from parts 1 through 5. If you're looking for a catch-up file that has all this code so you can get started right from this point, just look at the file description down below. We've coded almost everything in the game except we've got to do a little bit of work in our arrows to make our Ender Dragon vulnerable to arrows. And we've got 2 different dragon sprites here that I want to show you. This one on the left is the animated one that we're going to be working on in a second. This one here is just a simple still image of a dragon. Let me show that to you right now in the costumes menu. There we are. So this is a dragon seen from overhead, and what we're going to be doing in the game here is when we travel to the end dimension, the first thing that's going to happen is the dragon's going to swoop ominously across the screen. He's going to come from the bottom and swoop across to the top and then disappear. And then we're going to have the animated version of the dragon show up at either the left or the right side of the screen, swoop across the screen here in the background behind the house, then turn around, come to the front, and attack our house. And depending on whether you can hit him with your arrows or not, it'll eventually kill your house. So that's the kind of play mechanic we're going to be working on here today. Let's get started with this simple little bit, which is the original ominous swoop of the Ender Dragon, and that's how we'll know we're in the end dimension. Okay, so we're going to go to our events menu and just grab a green flag just to signal the start of this project. We of course want this dragon hidden at the beginning, so we'll go to looks and grab a hide. Now, all of this is going to be triggered when we travel to the end dimension, and that's a broadcast. Let's go to our events and grab a when I receive traveled to the end. That's going to be triggered by our game manager, which is the sprite we were working on last time. That will change the costume. Oh, it's actually the end portal that's doing that. Sorry. So the end portal, when it's clicked on, we'll switch our backdrop to the Minecraft end background, which I might as well switch to now. There we go. This is what the end looks like. And then from there, it will broadcast this message, travel to the end. Okay, so what does our dragon do when he gets that message? Well, to set the timing up properly here, we'll have to wait for 2 seconds. Then we've got a sound effect here called entry sounds. Let me play it for you now. So it's a flapping of wings and then a roar of the dragon. There we go. And so that's what's going to be happening right at the beginning. Let's start that sound. Let's go to sound effects, start sounds, entry sound. And then we're going to wait for precisely 3.3 seconds. And you're going to see the importance of the timing in a second here. We want this all to be lined up exactly perfectly. All right, and we're just going to swoop our guy across the screen now, as I said. So we'll start by using a go to command from our motion blocks. We're going to start at 0x in the middle of the screen and minus 317y, which is just enough to get the guy off the screen, to get our Ender Dragon graphic off the screen. We're going to use a glide command. There's no shooting him at this point, so this is just for effect. So we're going to use a glide effect here. We're going to glide for 1.3 seconds. And we're going to glide from an x of 0 and a y of 317, which is going to take him off the screen in the other direction. Once we're done with that, we're going to hide this fella, and he's not going to be useful at all for the rest of the game, basically. All right, so let's go ahead and try that right now. I'm just going to set up an event here so we can simulate this by broadcasting travel to the end. We're going to have this background is going to switch back to the main backdrop as well. So we're going to attach a block underneath here, which is switch backdrop to the end, and that'll make sure that we stay in the end dimension here. So when I click the green flag, our normal game loop will start. You'll see that our zombies will start to appear on the screen, but as soon as I broadcast the end dimension, they'll all disappear, and now we're ready for the next thing. And you can hear that ominous sound in the background, and here he comes. Here comes the Ender Dragon. Or he would come if I showed him. I forgot to add a show here. After the wait 2 seconds, there is a show command. So our dragon did go across the screen, but he was invisible. Let's try that again and in full screen. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to attach these 2 blocks here to a keyboard event so that I can do it even when I'm in full screen. So let's go attach that to the letter A. There we go. So now we can play the game here. We wait for zombies to appear. There we go. We hit the A button. There we go. Now we've triggered the end dimension. And here comes our dragon. Very ominous. It looked like some of the objects were in front of him, though. We need to move this guy to the front, I think. So let's go back to the code one more time. And we'll grab a go to front. There we go, right at when he gets that travel to the end message, and that will clean up that a little bit. One more try here. We'll hit the A button, and here comes the bad guy. There he goes across the top of the screen. See how that timing works out quite nicely? He roars just as he flies across the screen. Beautiful. All right, so now we're going to get into the meat of the project, which is this animated Ender Dragon sprite. Let's have a look at the costumes here. Okay, so here is our Ender Dragon animation. As you can see, it has quite a few costumes, 100 to be exact. And it cycled through this beautiful flapping motion here. Let me show you in a little more detail what that looks like. I've shown my Ender Dragon. He should be hidden right now, and I've actually put just a bit of temporary code here to make him flip through costume just so you can get a look at him. Maybe we'll cut his size down a little bit, maybe 70%. Whoops. All right, around 70 there. And let's click the green flag and see what his animation looks like. You can see that it's quite lovely. Taken straight from the Minecraft game, if I understand correctly. So we got a beautiful animation here. And we're going to be having this fellow fly around the screen in a continuous kind of loop where he's going to start off coming off the edge of the screen. He's going to fly behind your house off in the distance where he's going to be quite small. He's going to swing around. Now he's going to pick randomly which side of the screen he comes from. So he might come from the right, he might come from the left, but he's just going to swing across the screen, disappear, and then come back a little bit in the foreground, and then he's going to be bigger and swoop in front of the house. When he does that, if he gets to the middle here, he's going to damage your house unless you can shoot him down before he gets to your house. And it's going to happen in a series of waves. You can't kill him. No matter how many archers you have, you won't be able to kill him in one shot. And we're setting up a system here that will basically be a set of rules where if you hit him 4 times in one swoop, that will stop his attack and send him off And if you finally take all his hit points away, he'll have 12 hit points. Then he'll die forever. So you have to basically hit him 4 times each time around this loop. Otherwise, he will attack your house and destroy it. So we're going to set that all up right now with a whole bunch of code, and let's get to that. So I no longer need this next costume. Let's get rid of that right now. All right. So the first thing we do want to do with this fella is hide him. So let's go grab a hide from our looks commands. We're going to set our volume to 0. So let's go to our sound effects. And we're going to set volume to 0. We don't want any flapping noises or anything right away. And we'll be manipulating this volume to make it lower when he's in the background and higher when he's in the foreground, of course. All right, we're going to make him invisible. He's already hidden, but we're going to set his ghost effect so that we can have him fade in later. So we're going to set his ghost effect to 100, which is totally invisible. And then by subtracting from this number, we can make him slowly fade in onto the screen. We're going to set his brightness effect because we're going to play with his brightness later. So let's go set color and change that to brightness, and we'll set that to 0. Later on when he gets injured, we're going to change his brightness level to make him become brighter when he gets hit by an arrow. So we'll have to reset that here so that he doesn't keep being bright after that happens. All right, let's initialize some variables. So we've got a variable here called, so let's go set. The first one's the Ender Dragon Health. And we'll set that to 12, as I said. So twice as much as the endermen. We're now this complex system that I'm talking about here, where you're going to be able to shoot him a bunch of times, but only 4 of those shots are going to do damage. So at the beginning of his charge, when he comes up to the front of the screen, you're going to be able to hit him up to 4 times. So in order to calculate that, we have to figure out how many hit points he has before he starts charging. So, and we have a new variable for that. It's called Ender Dragon Charge Start Health. And if you don't have that in this version of the file, I think we might have added it later. Just be aware it's a global variable, so just go, if you don't have it, if you don't have any of these variables, you can go ahead and just create them. But I'm pretty sure you should have all of them. Not sure if you have this version. Ender Dragon Charge Start Health. And we also need a variable here called Ender Dragon Fall Velocity. One of these I know wasn't in your version of the file here. Now this one is a local variable, Ender Dragon Fall Velocity. So if you do have to make this variable, make sure that it's a local variable, because we're going to be making clones of the dragon and having them fall, and we want to make sure that this variable changes for the clone. Okay, let's grab a forever. And we're going to want him to keep switching costumes the way we did before. So let's just go next costume inside our variables here. And we're going to trigger him to make sounds here. So the first thing we're going to do is make him do flapping noises. It's all timed to work with the animation. So when he's on animation frame number 20, or when he's on animation frame number 72, those are the extents of his flapping. So when he's at the very top of his flap and when he's at the very bottom of his flap. So that's 20 and 72. So we're going to grab an if statement right down below. And we're going to say if costume number, we'll grab an or so we can check either of those circumstances. And we'll say if costume number equals 20, let's grab 2 equal signs. We need 2 on either side here. And we'll grab 2 costume names, which is at the bottom of our looks commands. The command is called costume number, and then you can change that to name. Well, actually, we do want costume number, sorry. So if costume number or costume number. So we're looking for costume 20 or costume 72. So if we hit either of those costumes, we're going to make a flapping noise. So let's go, we're actually going to create a custom block for that because there's a bunch of different flapping noises and we're going to kind of randomly check in between those guys. So let's go to our My Blocks. We're going to create a new custom block just called Flap. We're going to do a little script here that chooses between our flapping sounds. Let's go ahead and have a look at that right now. I'm just going to set this off to the side and code it beside our main script here. So our flapping script, just going to pick a random number. There's actually 5 different flapping noises, all a little bit different from each other. Let me play some of them for you. So here's flap 1, here's flap 2, flap 3, flap 4, and flap 5. Very subtle differences between them, but we just wanted to create a little bit of variety in the flapping sounds to make it seem more like a living creature. So all we're going to do is set a temp variable here. Let's go to our variables. Set temp to a random number from 1 to 5. Pick random from 1 to 5. And based on the outcome of that, we're going to, let's just stop this code here. We're going to pick a different flap sound. So if temp equals 1, oh, let's turn this off. So if temp is equal to 1, let's grab a temp in there. If temp is equal to 1, we're going to start a sound just called flap. And if it's equal to 2, we'll play the second flap sound, and I think you can see the pattern already. 3 is flap 3. 4 is flap 4. And, whoops, 5 is flap 5. So to show you this flap command in action, I'm going to have to undo some of the stuff we did here because this guy's going to be invisible right now and ghosted, and his volume is going to be set to 0, so we're not going to see or hear any of this right now. I'm just going to take these top 4 blocks, temporarily remove them from the script, and I'm also going to set the volume back to 100% just in case we accidentally flipped it off. And now when I click the green flag, let's just show the Ender Dragon. I've just placed him up here at the top left, and you can see that when I click the green flag, he starts flapping quite nicely. You can see how the timing's perfectly lined up with his wing movements. So very nice. So there's actually 2 sets of flaps in each animation, one with his tail up and one with his tail down, and so that's why we actually need 2 of those flap noises in every cycle of animation here. Okay, that part's working great. I'm going to just restore the code back to the way that it was supposed to work. Putting this back here and this back here. Okay, so there's one more condition we have to put in here. I'm going to grab another if statement and put it inside this other if statement with the flap in the middle. So we also, at this point, need to make sure that the dragon is alive when he's making that flap noise. So we're just going to go and say if our Ender Dragon health is greater than 1, then we'll play that sound. There we go. So of course he does have to be alive to make that sound. All right, next we're going to do a script here that changes the size. Let's go to our looks command. We'll grab a set size command for this dragon. So we're going to put it inside the forever, but outside of these if statements. Now we're going to do a bit of tricky math here to make the dragon change size depending on where he is. So he's going to be going, as I said, across the top of the screen here. And when he's going across the top of the screen behind the house, he's going to be quite small. And then he's going to swing around from behind the screen and then appear again in the front. And when he's in the front, he's going to be much bigger. So we could do a bunch of if statements saying if your y equals this, then make your size this. If your y is here, make your size this. But we also want him growing So things get a little bit complicated. What we're going to do instead is we're going to key his size into his Y attribute. The higher he is on the screen, the smaller he's going to get. Now that's a little bit more complicated than you'd think. So as I said, we're going to want the size of our dragon to key in on the Y position of the dragon. How high up he is, the higher he is, the smaller he's going to be, and vice versa. Now, it turns out that involves some fairly complex math, and I've done a little illustration here that explains some of the numbers that we're going to be using. Now, I don't have time to get into all the math. This is something that's called interpolation, which means that we're going to be translating one set of numbers into a different set of numbers that are exactly the same proportion to each other. So here's all the numbers that we're looking at, and I just want to show you so that you understand the numbers that we're plugging in. So the minimum size we're going to have is going to be a size of 10, and that's what this looks like, this little dragon here in the background. He's going to be at a Y of 160 near the top of his screen, so that's the maximum height that the dragon's going to be, and that's the minimum size he's going to be. Down at the bottom here is going to be his maximum size of 40, and his minimum Y value, which is 95. So we're interested in these numbers, but we're also interested in the distance between these numbers. The distance between his maximum size and minimum size is 40 minus 10, which is 30. So that's the size range. And the range of possible... I think I triggered Alexa there. So the range of the Y values here is going to be 160 minus 95, which is 65. So it's basically a difference of 65 Y between the lowest and the highest point. So those numbers, 30 and 65, also factor into our equation here. So just have a look at this and get a sense of what these numbers are that we're talking about. Now let's go back to our code. So I don't have time to get into the really complex math of interpolation here. The good news is it's all just arithmetic. We're just adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing here. Actually, there's no addition, just subtracting, multiplying, and dividing here. But we want to start with our Y position, which is located right here. And we're going to subtract 95 from it, which is the range of Y values that we can have. So that's basically going to bring our Y of 95 and make it pretend as though it was 0, basically. So we're going to zero out our Y position. Then we're going to divide it by the total range of heights that it can have. So remember that number is 65. So we're going to divide that number by 65. So that will convert our Y position to a number between 0 and 65, basically. All right. From there, we're going to multiply that number by the number of possible sizes that we can have, which is 30, right? The range of our heights the range of our sizes is going to be 30, between 10 and 40 here, right? Then we're going to take all of this and we're going to put it inside a minus sign on the right side of a minus sign. And we're going to take 40, which is the maximum size that we can have, and we're going to subtract this whole product from 40. And that is going to, in the end, give us a number between 10 and 40. So depending on the Y position, let's show our character here, and let me just show you how this works. So I'm not expecting you to really understand. Let me make the size bigger here so we can see the guy on the screen. All right. So I'm not expecting you to understand the interrelationship between all these numbers, and it would take a whole other lesson basically to explain how all this works, but I just want you to get a sense of the thinking that's involved here. You can plug in totally different numbers here for a different set of ranges and still get a useful number out of this. So as long as you know where we got these numbers from, you can duplicate this somewhere else. So right now my character's at a Y of let's move them a little higher. Let's say a Y of 100 here. So he's at a y of 100 now, and now if you run his y position through this formula, we end up with a product that's 37. So he's going to be a size of 37 as he's high up on the screen. If we move him up even higher, you can see the number goes down to 16. And if we move it down lower, it will become a much bigger number, 80. Now let's see that in action. We're going to plug this whole formula into the size setting here in the formula. We're going to, again, disconnect all this stuff here that's going to make stuff hide. And let's click the green flag. And you'll see that our dragon is a certain size here, but when we move it up the screen, it gets smaller. And the lower down the screen we drag him, the bigger he gets. Now, even if we take him outside of that range, the formula still works, so he's going to end up bigger than 100% here. In this case, he's at a size of 121, and we can move him way up to the top of the screen where he goes down to the minimum size of 2 or 3 on the screen here. Okay, so this is working exactly the way that we want it to. I'm sorry again that I can't explain all of the math here because it would take another 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm not sure you guys are that interested. Okay, so here's a formula that's going to adjust the size of our object. Okay, so we've manipulated the dragon's size here. We've got his sound effects going. This main loop for the dragon is just going to correct for one more thing here. Most of his, like all of his movement is going to be handled elsewhere in a different script that we're going to be working on in a minute here. So we've just taken some of the function of the dragon and moved them off into this forever loop here. Stuff that can keep running in the background even when the dragon's not visible here. Most of this is going to be triggered though with an event, and we're going to get to that in a second. We just need to clean up one more thing here, which is basically controlling the dragon's hit points if he gets hit by multiple arrows at once. So this again is a little bit complicated, but we're basically saying if our dragon has been hit by 4 arrows during any particular round, then he will lose 4 hit points, and he's going to create a clone of himself, and that clone is going to start falling off the screen. If he's been hit by less than 3 arrows, he's still going to, by less than 4 arrows, he's still going to take damage, but he's not going to fall off the screen, and he'll get an opportunity to injure your home base here. So let me show you how this works. We're going to put an if statement down below the size, and in there we're going to put an and. And on the left we're going to put a greater than sign. And the right we're going to put an equal sign. So first we're going to check and see whether the dragon has, how many points of hit points the dragon has lost during this particular charge. So at a different point in the code here, let's go back to our variables. We're going to get Ender Dragon's charge start health. We're going to get Ender Dragon health. And in a second here, we're going to need Ender Dragon can hit. Which is not a variable that we have right now. So let's go ahead and make that one. Ender Dragon can hit. There we go. All right. So we need to check right away now whether our dragon has taken any damage during this particular flyby. So we're going to take the initial the health he had at the beginning of the attack run, and we're going to subtract. So let's grab a minus sign, and we're going to subtract his current health. So if he started his run with 12 hit points and now he has 8, then we'll know that his damage changed by 4. So we'll say if his damage is greater than 3, so if he's taken enough to do that, and Ender Dragon can hit, meaning he's still in the middle of his fly past. If that number is equal to 1, so if he's flying past and his damage is greater than 3, the damage he's taken this flyby, then we can do a couple of things here. Let's go set some variables. So we'll set Ender Dragon fly progress. And that's another variable that we don't have yet. Let me just check to make sure that... No, that's just a global variable. So let's create a new global variable called Ender Dragon fly progress. And that number is going to go from 0 to 1, basically. It's just going to be 0 at the beginning of his flight and 1 at the end. And we're going to plug that number to some math to basically calculate the curve that he's flying along here. So we're going to set that, that progress to 1, which is going to mean that the code's going to think he's finished his fly past. We're going to set his health. Now, we don't actually want him to lose all the hit points, so we're going to set Ender Dragon health to the health he started with, -4. So let's grab a minus sign here under our green blocks. So the maximum he can lose is his starting health at the beginning of the charge -4. And we already know that he has taken that much damage, since he's taken at least 4 damage to be inside this if statement here. All right, and at the end here, we're going to set that can hit variable back to 0. Ender Dragon can hit. We'll set it back to 0 so that he can't do damage to your house, even if he continues flying past here, or in any event, if the momentum takes him past that X coordinate that we're looking for here. All right, so in that moment where this happens, we're going to create a clone of ourselves. So still inside the if statement here, create a clone of ourselves. We're going to hide the main dragon, because this clone is going to take over for him here. And then we're going to wait 3 seconds. All right, so the clone's going to fall and basically fall off the screen and delete itself. And that will be handled in a different script. Okay, so it's getting increasingly difficult to show all of this off because there's different scripts here that all kind of rely on each other. Let's work on the when I started the clone here that has this guy falling off, and I might be able to simulate that for you in a second here. So let's go when I started the clone under our control blocks. So when I start as a clone, we're going to do a big if-else statement here. It's going to determine, first of all, is our dragon alive? So if Ender Dragon health is less than 1, let's grab a less than sign. Ender Dragon health is right here. So if our dragon is dead, we're going to fall and we're going to trigger a game over event. If we have more than 1 health, then we're going to still fall, but we're going to loop back again and restart the game one more time, or restart the fly path, the next fly path for our dragon. All right, so let's start with this death condition first. We're going to play a little death sound effect, which sounds like this. Very sad sound. Again, ripped right from Minecraft. He's gonna be spinning around while he does that. So we're gonna set his rotation style. That's at the bottom of the motion blocks here. We're gonna set our rotation style to all around, and that's gonna let him spin, because until now he's been locked in the left-right position. Now we need a forever here. So it's weird to put a forever inside an if statement here. But he's basically just going to keep doing this until the clone gets deleted elsewhere. Okay, So we're going to have them fall in an accelerating way, which means we have a fall velocity that multiplies to make his speed. So let's go change a variable. We'll go to variables, change Ender Dragon fall velocity by minus 0.01. That's going to make our guy fall. And we're going to have him fall by the fall velocity here. So let's go change our y by Ender Dragon fall velocity, which we'll need a bubble that says that, Ender Dragon fall velocity. So we're going to change our y by that number, and we're going to change our x by a certain amount. So we're going to keep moving in the direction that we were already moving. Now we're going to see that we're going to explain this velocity system in a little bit, but it's all keyed into a variable called Ender Dragon attack side. So if he's attacking from one side, this number is going to be -1. If he's attacking from another side, it's going to be 1. And what this basically does is make it so that regardless of which side he starts from, he'll still be moving in the right direction. If we need him moving in a negative direction, this number, the attack side, let me show you the variable. Ender Dragon attack side, and I don't think we have that one in here yet either, so let's go ahead and create it. Call it Ender Dragon attack side. So we're going to change x by 0.1 times the attack side. So really we're just changing the volume by 0.1. So let's go multiply. But we're going to multiply that by 1 or -1. And so if it's a -1, it'll continue moving to the left as it's moving across the screen. If that variable is a positive number, it'll fall to the right. So it's a little trick we're using here so that we don't have to code this twice. All right, we're going to turn, and we're going to turn faster the faster the dragon's going. So we're going to key that into the Ender Dragon fall velocity. Let's go to our motion blocks. I'll get a turn clockwise here. And we'll say turn by, and we're going to put a multiplication symbol in there. Ender Dragon fall velocity times 20. Just grab that block here, pop it in there. So we're going to rotate at 20 degrees times the fall velocity. So as our velocity increases, the spin's going to happen faster. All right, so we need another condition here for if the dragon has just been hurt. So let's put an if-else inside, and inside there we're just going to determine which sound effect. There's 2 different hurt sound effects. Let me play them for you. Here's hurt 1, and here's hurt 2. Very subtly different, but we're going to pick between those 2. So we'll say if pick random number is equal to 2, pick random from 1 to 2 is equal to 2. So we're flipping a coin here, and depending on what the answer is, we're going to play either hurt 1 or hurt 2. Again, a very subtle difference, but it's these little touches that really make a game look pro. And so that's why we're taking the time here to show you some ways to mix things up in your game a little bit. Okay, just like the if statement, the else statement here is going to contain a forever that is going to start this guy spinning. And I think these numbers are going to change in a similar way. The numbers are a little bit different, but we're going to change y and change x here. So I'm going to grab everything from Oh, it looks like we're not actually done the first if statement. There's a couple of things I didn't add there, but we don't need those right now anyway. So the first, I'm going to do a couple of things here. Just follow along with me. So inside the first forever here, under the if statement, I'm just going to duplicate all of these blocks here. All 4 of the blocks that are inside here, I'm going to bring them down into the second forever statement. Now we don't need the turn here. I guess he's not going to turn if he's hurt here. He's just going to fly off the screen. All right, so we're going to change the fall velocity by minus 0.2. So he's going to swoop away a little bit faster. We're going to change his y by, yeah, that part's still good. He's going to fall at the same speed. Oh no, he's going to still fall by the fall velocity, but that velocity is going to change. I'm going to change the x by Ender Dragon attack side times 3. So he's going to fly away quite a bit quicker here. All right. Up top here in the first forever statement here, there's a couple of things I neglected to add after the turn. First of all, we're going to make our guy get quite a bit brighter. So we're going to go to our looks commands and we're going to go change brightness effect by 3. And we're going to go to the front layer here. Okay, so to test this code out, I'm going to have to remove a bunch of stuff right here. We've got to kind of simulate our dragon dying here. I'm just going to grab all of this code here just to simplify things so we can restore it again. So everything above the forever, I'm going to drag out. And in its place, I'm going to put a couple of different variables here. Actually, I'm going to connect these variables to a keyboard event here, just temporarily. So again, I can maximize my screen when I do that. So when I hit my letter B key, we're going to change some of the variables around. So we're going to pretend that he started with a health of 7 when he started his charge, that he ends his charge with a health of 3. So our dragon's been wounded, but not killed. And Ender Dragon can hit is equal to 1, which is what it has to be if he's in the middle of his charge. So I'm going to click this green flag, not the main green flag, just the green flag that's going to activate this block of code here. And that's going to get my guy flapping. Now the volume's still set to 0 because the code did that. Let's just set the volume back to 100 here. All right, so our dragon's flapping here. And now as soon as I hit the B key, he's going to get injured. Now his forward momentum isn't going to change at all because we don't have him moving forward at all right now. So all the movement he's going to be doing is just up and down here. But you can see if I injure him, he falls down off the screen. Beautiful. Now let's simulate him getting killed. We'll make him visible again just by showing him with the eyeball tool here. We'll click the green flag to get him flying. And now we're going to say if he has a 4 hit points at the start of his thing, and he ends up with his charge, and he ends up with 0, then he's going to get killed. So let's max the screen out here and see what that looks like if he dies. There we go. He starts spinning and then falls off the screen and eventually starts to fade away, and that's something we're going to do elsewhere in our script. Okay, beautiful. So that death mechanic's working quite nicely. I don't need this keyboard event here anymore, so I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to restore all the code that was under the green flag there. All right, so we're getting into the motion part of it next. There's one more block here that's quite a long one that has to do with the forward momentum of our dragons. So let's go ahead and start coding that. So that part gets triggered when I travel to the end. So let's go when I receive travel to the end. All this motion stuff is going to start. The first thing we're going to do is leave 8 seconds for that initial animation, the ominous dragon flying across the front of the screen here. So we're just going to do wait 8 seconds for that to trigger itself. And then we're going to start a forever loop inside there. And I don't think this is an if else. It's just one big if statement here. So let's go if. If our ender dragon is still alive and we're still alive. So let's grab an and statement. And we're just going to check both those variables. So before we start doing any of this, we want to make sure the game hasn't ended and we hadn't noticed. So we're going to check and see whether two variables are greater than 0. And those two variables are ender dragon health and house health. Ender dragon health and house health. So the ender dragon health, keeping track of our dragons alive, and house health, keeping track of we're alive. All right. So if we get that travel to the end, and if in fact everyone's still alive, here we can do a show, and this is going to make our dragon visible after 8 seconds. We're going to have to send him to the back layer because we want him to be going behind the house in his initial swoop. So we'll say go to front layer, change that to back. All right. Now let's go set a variable. First thing we want to do is make sure that that charge health at the beginning, so ender dragon charge start health, we're going to make that equal whatever his current thing is before he starts his attack run here. So set that charge health to whatever his current health is. So that'll match up his current charge start or his current health on this charge variable to what it is at the beginning of his charge. And again, that'll remember what his initial hit points were before he starts charging and get attacked by arrows. Okay, we're going to set dragon can hit to 1, which means that he can in fact attack you. We're going to do another random number here. So let's go grab an if, and we're basically flipping another coin again. So we're going to go pick random equals. So if we pick a random from 1 to 2 and it equals 1. Oh, this is actually an if-else statement. I should have made that an if-else. Sorry about that. So that's going to be, yeah, right underneath there. So still inside the main if statement here. So if we roll a 1, or if we flip and we land heads, if you prefer, we're going to set the attack side. So let's go to our variables. Set ender dragon attack side to -1, which means he's coming from one side of the screen, or 1, which means he's going to come from the other side of the screen. So every time this guy swoops across the screen, he's either going to be going left to right or right to left, depending on which of these numbers is rolled. This is a really cool way to make sure that he's coming in randomly without having to do an if-else statement where we have to do all of his movement code inside one block and all of his movement code inside another. You're going to see how brilliant this is in just a second. All right, so let's set our volume. When he's in the background, his volume is going to be 30%. He's going to be making noises, but much more quietly because he's off in the distance. So we're outside the if-else here. We'll set our volume to 30%. And now here's where we're going to tell him to point in a different direction depending on how this flip of the coin went. So we're going to go point in direction 90, instead of 90, which is to the right, we're going to go 90 times the attack side variable. So 90, and let's pop that variable attack side, ender dragon attack side, we'll pop it into there. So if we rolled a 1 and got a -1 for this value, that means that we're going to point in direction -90, which means we're pointing to the left and moving to the left, right? And otherwise, if we get a 1, then we'll be pointing to the right and moving to the right. All right, so the movement part comes next. Okay, so we're going to set him up on the proper side of the screen. So now that he's pointing in the right direction, we're going to move him to one edge of the screen, the left or the right. So let's go grab a go to XY. We want the Y to be 158, which is right around the top of the screen. And we want the X to be 250, which is the off the edge of the screen, and again multiplied by that number. So let's go grab a times and a drag and attack side. I'm just going to duplicate that and pop it to the left side and change the 90 to 250. So again, it's going to start either at 250 or negative 250, depending on how our coin flip went. All right, just want to move this off to the side. We got some stuff colliding here. Okay, so underneath, now that we've gotten started, now we can start moving across the screen. And we're basically going to move him at a speed of 4 and to go all the way across the screen, which is 480 pixels across here, or most of the way across. We're going to repeat. We're going to have him move 411 times, which is exactly as far as we want him to go before he starts turning and goes to the foreground of the screen here. So we're going to go repeat 111 times. And what we're going to do inside here is first we're going to have him fade in. So let's go change ghost effect by -8. That's going to make him fade in. Now that number, that ghost effect number, is going to get way above 800. It's going to end up at -888. But in practice, you can't go lower than 0. So it's just going to fade him in until that ghost effect reaches 0 and he's fully visible, and then it'll just ignore this command. And in here, we're going to do our movement too. So we're going to change our X in here, motion, change X by, and let's do some multiplication in here again. And again, we're multiplying. Actually, let's just duplicate this multiplication again and pop that in the X. So it's going to be -4 times ender drag and attack side. So why -4? These numbers were positive up here. It's because we actually want our character moving in the opposite direction to the number that was rolled. So if I got an ender drag and attack side roll of -1, that means I'm going to be facing to the left, and I want to move to the left, which means my X value is going to have to decrease. And if I'm moving to the right, then my X value is going to have to increase. So I'm going to change X by -4 times ender drag and attack side. So if my number is 1, that means then the final number is going to be -4, which will have me moving to the left. And if that number is -1, so -1 times -4, those two minuses cancel each other out, which means we're going to move at a speed of 4 to the right across the screen. So that works quite nicely. So a very clever system here. We have to do it in 3 different sides here, but in the end, we end up accomplishing quite a bit in terms of being able to move across the screen in one of 2 directions without doing a whole lot of extra code, as I've already said. Okay. So where are we next here? All right. So we've moved across the screen, and that's actually going to bring us right behind the other guy. Let me see if I can simulate that right now. Let's make the dragon visible. And when it receives travel to the end, so let's get it flapping. I'm just going to click on this flap code here. We're going to have to make it visible again because he's invisible. All right, now he's off the screen. He's in the wrong location, but I believe when I go travel to the end here, let's get rid of the 8 seconds because I don't want to wait 8 seconds for this to happen. Let's just click on when I travel to the end here and see if he shows up. There we go. Swoops by in the background. Very cool. Now we've got that Minecraft tower defense background here that takes a few seconds to disappear. So let me just hide that. And you can see the way this guy swoops off in the background. Now he's just repeating this code over and over again because we haven't quite finished it. But you get the idea of what's happening here. Let me try clicking that green flag again here one more time. So click the green flag to get him flapping. I'm on the wrong thing now, sorry. So there we go. So let's go, we'll click the green flag to get him flapping. We'll do the, we'll make him visible here. And actually we don't even have to do that. We just click on travel to the end here. So let's click on travel to the end and then maximize it. And you can see him flying around here, beautiful. I thought he was actually going behind the house here, but it appears not. Well, his movement is going to be controlled by some other stuff as well, so let's just hang tight with that. All right, I'm going to put the 8 seconds back here so that we have time to manage all of this. Okay. Let's keep going. So our dragon has swooped behind through the background here. All right, so now he's coming in for his attack run. So we're going to set that variable. So I'm down at the bottom of this travel to the end. I've restored the 8-second delay there. And so still inside the main if statement, but outside of everything else here. Actually change X. No, sorry, so we're going to want to be, so we're placing this underneath the repeat statement, but inside the if statement here. Okay. That's not an if else. Just wanted to double check that. Okay, so we're going to set Ender Dragon can hit to 1 because we're making our attack run. We're going to set our volume to 100%. That's under sounds. We're going to go to the front layer here because we're moving in front of everything else now. We're going to make a growling sound before he attacks. That's a custom block that again picks between some random sounds. I'm going to deal with that in a second here. Let's just finish coding this part here. So I'm going to define that growl later, but let's just plunk that growl right down here under go to front. We're going to have him point in the opposite direction from the way he was pointing before. So we've got this point in direction 90 times Ender attack dragon side. So now we're going to point in the opposite direction. So point in direction, multiply. It's going to be -1, or sorry, -90 times attack direction or attack side. Here we go. All right. So he's pointing in the proper direction now. Now we're using this variable called fly progress. So let's set it to 0. As I said before, that number is going to go between 0 and 1. That's Ender Dragon Fly Progress. There it is. So at the beginning of the run here, it's going to be 0, and it's going to go up just by a little bit at a time until it gets to 1, basically. Okay, from here, we're going to have the dragon swoop across on his attack run. We don't want him to go straight across the screen, so we're going to have him follow a curved path as he goes along the as he goes across the front of the screen and attacks your house. And we're going to cut it into a couple of different parts. We're going to have him go along the curve, then do some stuff, and then go further along the curve and do some stuff and go further along the curve. Now, there's different ways that you could simulate this kind of curve effect, but today we wanted to show you a fancy mathematical way to do it using something called Bezier curves. What's really neat about this is if you can figure out this code and grab it and put it in your backpack, you'll be able to have other objects follow a curved pathway and move around in ways that you can design in advance. So you can basically design your own curve and then have objects follow it to do all kinds of cool different shapes that might be useful in other projects. Let me show you the project that was the basis for all of this. So this is a project called 4-Point Bezier Curve by someone named Ray Tracing, who's basically taken the complex math in here and turned it into into Scratch terminology here. I'll start the program here. So I'm going to be talking more about Bezier curves and its inventor, Pierre Bezier, who was a engineer for the Renault car company. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on my live stream on June 19th, 2021. So if you're interested in seeing more of a takedown of how that works, feel free to watch my live stream. You'll be able to find it on my YouTube channel, Chromeworks Technology. Anyway, so a Bezier curve is a mathematical way to describe any curve using 4 points. There's the beginning point and an end point, which are the blue dots here, and 2 other dots, the green ones here, that represent what direction the curve moves in. So watch what happens when I grab one of these blue dots and move it around. You can see that the curve changes shape to go from the beginning to the end point. These 2 green dots also affect the shape of the curve, and if you play with them, you see that we can create all kinds of interesting curving shapes here. What's neat about this is all you need to plot these is a mathematical formula and 4 different points on a grid. So a beginning point, an end point, and these 2 modifier points, these 2 green ones. So by plunking 8 different numbers into a formula, we can generate this curve. And any possible set of curves can be described geometrically just using a formula where you plug 8 numbers into it. Really, really cool. So what I'm going to suggest you do is, if you're looking to use a curve like this in your own projects, just design the curve to look exactly the way that you want it to by playing around with these values. And once you've got your proper curve, all you have to do is go into your project and look at the X and Y values of these dots. So let's go inside the project. Here you can see this. We've got our 4 dots, point, 0.2, 0.3, and 0.4. So you can see 0.1 is actually the one down at the bottom right here. It's just the way that I set it up. We could, of course, set it up the other way so that it's on the left here if we wanted to. So I'm just going to design a different curve here. Okay, so 0.1, we know that its X and Y coordinates are minus 177, minus 96. 0.2 has its X and Y coordinates. 0.3 has its X and Y coordinates, and 0.4 has its X and Y coordinates. So to design a curve like this, you just need a custom block that basically encapsulates that formula. Let's go over to the cat icon, or the cat sprite here that has all the code inside it. Well, the one thing you will see here that you'll be quite shocked by is just how long this code is. So the custom block that we're going to be using is not too intimidating looking. It's just a spot with 8 slots in it for the 8 different XY coordinates that we're going to pump into here. But the actual code to make this happen is an incredibly complex formula. Let's have a look at this formula. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see it. So it's basically starts over here on the left and keeps going and going and going and going and going. This is not a lie, guys. This is the biggest piece of Scratch code I have ever seen. I'm not going to attempt to explain this to you because it's simply beyond the level of anyone who is going to be in elementary school or early high school, the way most of my viewers are. You do not need to understand how this works to make use of it, though. So this gigantic custom block that I've just shown you is perfect for drawing curves on the screen using the pen tool. But in this case, we don't want to draw a curve. We want an object to follow this curve along the way. To do that, we have to make even further modifications and complicate this script a little bit further. And that's something Jeffrey, my lead coder, who actually created Minecraft Tower Defense, has done for me. So let's go have a look at the original at Minecraft Tower Defense. We're back in it again here, and you can see that I do have access to this Bezier curve custom block, but there's one addition here, which is a variable here called progress that we can also enter into here. And progress just shows how far along the curve a particular object is. Now, during my my June 19th live stream coming up this weekend, if you're well, actually, it will already have passed by the time you watch this video. You'll see a much more detailed description of how this works, and we'll run through a few examples. But basically, you should know that this modified version of the code is what you're going to have to use if you want to harvest this code and use it in your own animation projects. So I'll be giving you a much more thorough description of that. In the meantime, though, we're just going to be using this code. Now, this code may not be in the version of the file that you are working on. I'm going to go back and edit all of the catch-up files up until this point. So catch-up file 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to include this code, and also the finished version of the game, which you can find in the link down in the description. It also will have this code in it. So you're going to have to copy this entire gigantic block into your backpack in order to use it in other projects. And again, on my live stream, I'll be explaining how to actually make functional use of this. All right, so this custom code block is being called from within another custom code block called fly along curve. And all this is something that's going to make our object fly along the shape of that curve using parameters that I've pre-fed into it. So I'm not going to make you enter this code because it's fairly complicated. Again, we're just filling in the blanks in this Bezier curve here, but we're using variables from the game and positions on the screen. So you can see that we're using Ender Dragon attack side in a couple of cases here, multiplied by a certain number. Again, to position our points so they're different depending on which side the dragon is going along. So I wouldn't recommend you actually try and code these things yourself because it's just too easy to make simple little mistakes. There will be a version of this fly along curve block included in all of the versions of the file. So if you have been coding along from the beginning and you don't have access to these, just go back to any of the saved versions of the files. You can find the finished game in the file description, and that will get you going here. All right. So now that we have these blocks in place here, we're just going to start coding with them, and I'm just going to explain the rest of the game here. So right now our Ender Dragon fly progress is 0, and that keys into this Bezier curve thing. As I said, that variable goes from 0 to 1, with 1 being the end of the line and 0 being the beginning of the line. So right now we're at the beginning of the line, and we're going to go 60% of the way across the line here. So our dragon is going to swoop towards the middle here, or towards the middle in the other direction. And while he's doing that, we're going to be trying to take shots at him. If we don't get 4 arrows into him before he completes this loop here, then he's going to be able to damage our house. And that's what we're going to do right after this. So let's go. We're going to repeat 60 times. So actually, we're inside this other if statement, just like this. So right below set Ender Dragon fly process, we're going to repeat 60 times fly along curve. So when our dragon is 60% of the way along its fly path here, if we haven't hit it yet, it's going to get an opportunity to hit our house. So the way that it's going to know whether it can hit our house or not is going to be based on this Ender Dragon fly progress variable, which you might remember over in the other block here, we switched over to 1 if we took a certain amount of damage, if we took 4 hits. So if that number is still less than 1, let's go put an if statement down below here, right below the repeat. So if, we'll do a less than, Ender Dragonfly progress. If it's less than 1, if we haven't been hit, of course it's going to be less than 1 if we're halfway through here, but it's going to go up to 1 if we get hit. All right, so in that case, we're going to play that player hit sound, which is the oof sound that we've already used elsewhere. And I'm not sure if it's in this particular sprite. It looks like it's not, so we're going to have to grab it from one of our other sprites. It may or may not be in your version of the file, but remember it's in all the other sprites that we've done here. So let's go back to our code here. We're going to make a player hit sound, which is an oof sound. And if we're still alive here, if our health is greater than 1, then we want to take our hit points down by 1 here. So if house health is greater than 1, if we're still alive, then we're going to change our house health by -1. Oh, that's a set. Change house health by -1. All right. Next. So that if statement was inside this other if statement here that does the damage to you. And then we're back outside of that, and we're continuing with our flying loop here. So let's go grab another repeat. So we're going to repeat the next 30% of the way along the trip here, which is just going to be continuing to fly along the curve. It will know to pick up where it left off because that variable progress will still remain higher. Well, it will be somewhere between 0 and 1, which it recorded as it was moving along here. All right, and then for the last 10%, so let's go duplicate, fly along curve, and we'll do it for 10%. For the last 10% of the trip, we're going to make him fade away. So let's go grab a looks block, change color effect, and we'll change that to change ghost effect by 10. So that will make him fade away as he gets to the end of his circle here. After he's done flying, he's going to come around and swing around the back. We're in a forever loop here, so he's going to swing around the back again. When he's far away, we're going to set our volume back to 30%. And we're going to wait a random amount of time here before he shows up again. So maybe give you some time to do a last minute frantic digging, trying to get a few more archers going before he reappears again. So let's wait from 3 to 7 seconds. Feel free to change that up if you want this a little harder or easier. And then we just start the whole attack run all over again. So really this attack run script isn't all that complicated. We just we fly against the background, then we fly partway against the foreground, we do damage, and then we continue flying. And if we're wounded along the way, then we get into a different when I started the clone routine here that will have us fall off the screen one way or the other, and then that loop is going to start up all over again. Okay, I did not populate this growl thing here, which is going to just basically mix up the kind of growls that our dragon's going to be making. There's a couple of different ones here again. So let me find that. There's actually 3 different growls here. And it's going to be very similar to the thing that we did with the flap noises. So actually, I'm going to find a copy of the flap code, and I'm just going to do a duplicate of that. Here it is. I'm just going to grab all the code down below it, and I'll duplicate it. And that will save us a little bit of coding time here. So we're going to pick a random number from 1 to 3 instead of 1 to 5 here, and we have 3 different circumstances. So if you get 1, it'll be growl, or growl 2, or growl 3. There we go. I'm not sure if our volume's turned on. Let's give that a try. There's 1 growl. Now you can hear that one's a little different. I think that was their 3rd growl sound there. Okay, so we're making a random growl sound every time this is evoked, and that's already shown up in the code here. We always growl at the same point here. Okay, one other little bit of code that we're going to need in order to make this work, which is our arrows still haven't been coded to work on the dragon yet. So we're going to have to go back to our arrows and do a little bit more coding there before we continue. So I'm looking at the big block of code here that says when I started the clone inside my my arrow. I think there's only one of those in here. So we're going to scroll down towards the bottom. There's a delete this clone. All right. So there's a couple of if statements down here at the bottom, and there's like 3 different if statements stacked up on each other here. I'm going to get rid of not get rid of them. I'm going to move aside these 2. I'm going to add 1 if statement down below it, and then I'm going to restore this. So now there are 4 if statements in a row stacked up here instead of 3. They're all parallel to each other. You can see that they're all lined up perfectly with each other. And so this if statement, the second one in the row here, is going to be the one that deals with Ender Dragon. So if if I'm touching, now the reason this has to be coded differently from the rest is that we can only hurt the dragon if that variable Ender Dragon can hit is equal to 1. So that's why we're giving it its own piece of code here. So instead of just saying if touching enderman or creeper or whatever. So if, and I'm going to put an and statement in there. And so if touching Ender Dragon, so if the arrow is touching the Ender Dragon, and Ender Dragon can hit is equal to 1. Let's go find that. So if we're able to hit the dragon and we're touching it with an arrow, then we can do everything that's necessary to hit the dragon. Now there's one more condition here, which is if we've already launched 4 arrows into our character, we cannot do any more damage to him. So we're putting in second if statement inside this if statement, and that's going to basically be comparing his existing hit points with what he was when he started his charge. So let's grab a less than sign and pop it in there. And we need a minus sign as well on the left side of that. Okay, so Ender Dragon start health. So we're comparing our existing health. We're comparing the charge start health, which is how many hit points we had at the beginning of our charge, minus our current hit points, which is Ender Dragon health. And if that is less than 4, then we're allowed to do damage. But if it's more than 4, it's going to ignore this if statement, and the bullets are just going to bounce off of our dragon here. All right, so inside this if statement here, we're going to change a variable. Let's change our Ender Dragon health by -1. So that's going to be the actual damage done to him. We're going to broadcast a message here called Dragon Hit. And we haven't done the Dragon Hit yet, so we're going to get on that in a second. Dragon Hit. And we're going to delete the clone of that arrow so that it can't continue to do damage to anyone. All right, so that part's all good. We should be able to do damage to the dragons now. And let's see if we can find that dragon hit. Here it is. So the last little bit we need here when the dragon gets hit by an arrow is we're going to have it start to glow a little bit. So let's go to our event blocks here. We're going to go when I receive dragon hit. We're just going to have it glow and then unglow itself really quickly. So let's grab a repeat block. Repeat 5 times. Change brightness. By 20%. So it's basically going to turn into a white blob. And then let's go duplicate this repeat statement and its contents. And we're going to have to go -10 here to bring it back, to restore it back to its ordinary position. Okay, we're pretty much ready to end our game now. There's one little booger that I caught as I was testing this a couple of minutes ago, and that is down here in the travel to the end code. Towards the bottom here, you can see if house health is greater than 1, take our health down. What that's going to end up doing is once we get down to 1 health, we won't be able to get any lower than that. So we actually have to change this greater than to 0, or we're not going to be able to get killed in the game. So make sure you correct that variable. Now to simulate this without playing the whole game, I've created a little block here that's just going to set up the environment variable so that everything's working properly. So I just set up a quick key here that said when I hit the letter C, I give myself 100 gold, which is enough to buy a bunch of archers. I switch my backdrop to the end, and then I broadcast that travel to the end message, which will trigger the dragon. So we can go ahead and try that right now. I'm going to click the green flag. You notice my title didn't appear because I hit it. So let's make that show again. There's no manual command to make it show. So we're just going to make it show. Here we go. So we've started our game. We're going to wait for that to fade out. Our bad guys are going to appear. And now I'm going to trigger that trip to the end dimension here. There we go. Now we're in the end dimension. And here comes the dragon. Sweeps across the screen once. Meanwhile, I'm going to build a bunch of archers here. And you see, because he swings by in kind of a loop here, following that Bezier curve that we set up. Now he swings around the other way. Now he's going to be coming from this side. Watch him swoop around and do another damage to us. Okay, I'm going to start hitting him now. Next time he comes by, we're going to be ready for him. He's coming this way. Pull back my arrows and get him. There we go. And instead of big hit, he falls down. Beautiful. So let's let him kill us this time. So I'm just going to let him swoop by the house. Our hit points reach 0. And then we get to the you died screen. Perfect. Let's try that one more time. We'll wait for this to fade off the screen. I'll hit the C button. It'll take us to the end. Let's build a bunch of archers. Many as we can afford here. There we go. And now let's try taking him out this time. I'll kill him. Oh, I missed that time. Let's try that one more time. I'm in attack combat mode here. There we go. Get him. There you go. That's 1 hit point. So we've taken 4 hit points off of him. We have to hit him 3 times in a row with 4 arrows at least in order to kill him here. He's coming around this way this time. Let's get our arrows ready. Get him. There we go, he falls again. And last time around, which way is he flying now? He's coming from the left. Here we go. And hopefully this should be the one that kills him. There we go. And there he goes. He spins, goes down, and our credits start rolling. There we go. All right, so I didn't give you the code for the credits. You can set up your own credits here if you've made the game yourself. Do make sure to credit Chromeworks. So I've got a little credit sequence that I've added to all the older versions of the file. We didn't do that last week. I'm not going to show you how to do that, but you can freeze frame on the code right here and grab all the pertinent code. So the code's just basically waiting here invisibly until our Ender Dragon health is less than 1, and our Ender Dragon charge start health is less than 1 as well. So that's to make sure that we don't end the game prematurely if we've shot too many arrows into him before he finishes the attack run. You know, remember, he can only be taken out 4 at a time. Okay, so wow, that was quite a monumental project, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know that was a ton of code. There is a written code reference that we're publishing this week that has a printout of all of this code if you need some help. And remember, we've got catch-up files that will bring you to each single part of the code. There won't be a catch-up file for the last part because that's basically the finished game here, but you can always use that as a reference. So if you get stuck anywhere on the line and stuff doesn't work, I would suggest you go back to the latest catch-up file that brings you right to where we started from, and then start following the tutorial from there to get stuff working. Even if you don't build this game yourself, I hope that just by watching me build this and seeing some of the techniques and ideas that were incorporated in this, that you learn a little bit more about coding and how you might approach your own game design projects as you move on to them in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please drop us a like and subscribe to us if you enjoyed this, and drop us a comment. Let us know if you built this game, and if you did build it, share the project with us over at the Chromeworks Scratch channel, and let us know that you built it. And we'd be, if you add some new twists to it, I'd be happy to show them on my live stream, which again airs on Saturdays at 10 a.m. In the meantime, thanks for sitting through this marathon with me. Next week, we're going to be back with Super Smash Brothers, which I hope is going to be a 3-part tutorial. And our co-op student, Ben, has just finished working on it. I've played it already. It's fantastic. So you're going to hear a little bit more about that next week. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.